Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1389A, and today's date is September 29th, 2017, and the title of the episode is, If the Economy Has Recovered, Why Did This Just Happen? Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we've been reporting on student loans, the housing market, for quite a while, especially when the corporate media wasn't talking about it at all. And now we see there are signs that the corporate media, they need to acknowledge that things, well, they're not going as well as they've been telling us, and they're starting to report on things that are, imploding on themselves, like the student loan market, for instance. Now, student loan defaults, they're on the rise. Now, we've been talking about this for quite a while. Now the corporate media is out there, and they've cited that, yes, there has been an uptick because the Department of Education came out with a report saying that, yes, student loan defaults, they are on the rise. Now, the Department of Education cited that 11.5% of the 5 million borrowers who started repaying federal loans in October of 2013 defaulted by September of 2016. The proportion of borrowers who defaulted prior to this report was 11.3%, so it increased by 0.2%. Now, we've been watching the student loan market, and we need to understand that the government, well, they had to manipulate these numbers in a way to make it look like that, yeah, this isn't as bad as it really is. Now, remember, all these individuals that have been going to college, there's been problems. It's very difficult to get a job or a high-paying job, and I know many individuals who've been writing in, and I know from family members where they still can't find work. Yes, you can go to college, you can put yourself into debt, but if you're not going for something very, very, very specific, and you're just going for a BA or a BS, coming out of school, you really have no experience in anything. Yes, you might be able to get a low-paying job, or maybe you'll have to intern, but many people, they can't really find any work, and this is why they're working part-time jobs. This is why we're having these kids live with their parents longer and longer and longer, because they just can't find the work. So what the government has done is, since they can't find work, they say, okay, how much are you making? Oh, you're working part-time at this job, you're working part-time at this job, you're making $20,000 a year. So what we'll do is we'll modify your student loan to the amount that you're making, spread it over 25, 30 years, and this will be your payback. Even as they're doing this, it's becoming more and more difficult for these individuals to pay back their student loans. And can you imagine if the interest rates started to move up? It would be a complete and utter disaster. Now, we see that consumer confidence, it is dropping right now, and America's confidence in the economy, well, it's starting to falter right now. And we're seeing that many individuals are looking at this and saying, you know something, the home buying conditions, they're not as favorable as they were 5 years ago. And what's very interesting about this is that they're telling us how great the market is. And if you go back all the way to 2010, 2011, we are at that point. Now, in 2013, 2014, 2015, people believed the hype that the housing market was bouncing back, everything is great, and there were no bubbles to be found. Even 2 years ago, UBS came out, and they looked at the world's most expensive housing market, and they found that London and Hong Kong were the only two areas where they might be at risk of being in a bubble. Fast forward to today, guess what? Things have radically changed. Now UBS is looking, and they're saying, okay, we're looking at many different areas like Munich, Amsterdam, London, Paris, Geneva. We're going to Sydney, Hong Kong, Stockholm, out in Canada, Toronto, Vancouver, in the United States, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Boston, New York, Miami, Chicago. And you can see, especially in the United States, these are the cities that Kay Schiller looks at, and this is the places where they pumped up the bubbles. But we can see that they're starting to recognize that there's a lot of bubbles happening right now, and we know why this is, because they needed to push the system up. They needed to push the housing market globally up, because when people feel like their house is worth more, they feel good about it. It's only on paper, because you only get that money if you sell your house. So everything that you're looking at is on paper, just like the stock market. Oh, look, my stocks went up. Well, they really didn't go anywhere until you sell it, because they could be up today. Tomorrow they could be down. And guess what? You really didn't make anything because you still are holding that paper and it's losing value now. Same thing with houses. Yes, you have a house, But if the market crashes tomorrow, guess what? All those people who bought in the height of the housing market in 2006, 2007, today, they're still below what they paid for it. So they didn't even recoup that money. And we're seeing that many of these areas, they are in bubbles right now. And guess what? When the system comes down and the houses start to crash, which we're going to see because Wolf Richter, he laid it out in all the different cities showing that we are way above the housing bubbles that we were in back in 2007, 2008. We know we're in for a major, major disaster. Now, we've been hearing all in the corporate media, and Trump is out there telling us how great the economy is, that GDP is going to be 3% and the market's going up. The question is, all the soft data is telling us that, yes, the economy is doing better. But the hard data, well, guess what? It's collapsing. And it's collapsed to its weakest point since February of 2009. And what's very interesting about this is that this is the 6th monthly drop in hard economic data in a row. Something that has never happened before, unless we look back, guess what? In the time that we're in the Great Recession of 2006, 2007, 2008. Here we're supposed to be in a recovery, and we can see that the U.S. hard economic data, well, it's not doing what the survey data, the soft data is doing, because the hard data is the real data. And we've been following this, and we have been seeing that the real economic data, and I'm not talking about the manipulation that the government puts a spin on all the data that they put out there. Same thing with the Fed. I'm talking about what you see with your eyes, what you notice out there, what people are talking about, because this is what's real. I mean, if you have an economy and the news, the corporate media is out there telling us that, unemployment's at 4-something%, the stock market's going up, yes, you can believe those numbers. But then you start to walk around and saying, okay, that store's gone, that store's gone, all these houses are for sale, no one's coming to buy these houses. I look online and I see that they've dropped their housing prices. Something's going on here. Something's not right. The foot traffic in restaurants, when you go into them, they're not as packed as they used to be. I'm not talking about happy hour during the bar hours. I'm talking about the everyday restaurant where, they're serving food and things like that. Because I've noticed that when you go into these restaurants, they're not as packed as they used to be. And the Restaurant Performance Index is showing that people are not going to these areas to spend their money on food anymore. And we can see this is happening to many different areas, and it is spreading. It's not improving. Everything is not getting better, just like they told us that retail is going to bounce back. They're even saying that this holiday season is going to be pretty darn good. They feel that this holiday season, things are going to bounce back. Really, with thousands and thousands of stores closing, with more and more people losing their job, the retail industry is just going to bounce back. Does that make any sense? No, it doesn't. People are going to say, okay, we got to do something for the holiday season. Yes, they will purchase, but they're not going to purchase as much as they normally do. Because people are nervous, they're afraid. They don't know if their job is going to be there. Now, Fitch has downgraded Deutsche Bank to BB+, triple B+, from A-. And what they're saying right now is that there's a lot of pressure on their earnings, and they don't see the recovery of the bank. They're saying the revenue that the bank is bringing in, well, it's not going to happen in the next couple of years. And they're seeing that this revenue might actually drop over the next couple of years. Now, these banks have been propped up. They've been propped up to make everyone believe that everything is fine. But we have banks failing in Italy. We have them failing in Spain. Deutsche Bank was failing. But when they inject this easy money, this free money into these banking systems to prop them up, it doesn't mean everything is all better. It just means it's a Band-Aid fix. It's almost like having a household and you're in a lot of debt, you can't pay your bills, and you get another credit card and it's $10,000 worth of more credit. Yes, you can say everything is fine. You feel relieved. You can pay this bill. You can pay that bill. The lights stay on. I can keep the car. I can pay for this. I can go food shopping. But what happens is later on, as you use this borrowed money, you end up in the same position because you don't have that revenue coming in. This is what's happening to the banks. They don't have the revenue coming in, and they're continually being injected with this free money, and it only lasts for a little while. Look at the country of Greece. The same thing's happening there, where they give them a lot more debt. Yes, they feel relieved. They feel everything is fine until 8, 9, maybe a year later, they're back in the same boat. This is how the central bankers work. They trick you into thinking that everything is fine by giving these banks, by giving the countries, by telling you to take out another credit card, to take out another loan. They trick you into thinking this is the way it's supposed to be. The world is not supposed to be run on debt. This is not how you run an economy. This is how the central bankers bring in profit to themselves and to those higher up in the governments. It's not how they help the people. But we've been trained to believe this. We've been trained to think that the dollar is worth something. Actually, it's an instrument of debt. We're not supposed to be receiving an instrument of debt. It makes no sense to receive this, where we have to pay this back to someone, where we owe this money as the government continually borrows. So what we're seeing right now is the economy, even though they're telling us it's recovering and everything's getting better, well, it really isn't, because we've been tracking this, we've been following this. Banks are now being downgraded. This has happened back in 2007, 2008. We're seeing the same thing happen right now. We're seeing that the consumer confidence in housing and everything else, well, that is faltering right now. People are not looking at it saying, yes, I feel confident. UBS is noticing that, well, there's a lot more cities that are looking like bubbles and we might have problems. And we're seeing all this happen at the same time. And we're going to see a lot more of this. And we're going to see a lot more of the economy start to deteriorate as we move forward. It's not going to improve. And after this holiday season, it's going to be a complete disaster. We're going to see a lot more stores close. Online, they're going to tell us how great it is. Amazon brought in like $5 billion, even though retail is a $1 trillion market. We're going to see a lot of brick and mortar stores close because people just don't have the funds. And as more and more of these stores close, more and more people lose their jobs. Trucking is affected. Real estate, commercial real estate is affected. Everything is affected from all this happening. It's just not like, ooh, this one store closed, because they're not just closing one store, they're closing hundreds or thousands of stores. And it affects a lot. Because think about the truckers that are bringing the products back and forth to all these stores, making deliveries. Well, that's less places they have to go. It hurts every single industry. And we're seeing this all happen at the same time. This is why we're telling you to get prepared. This is why you're telling you to get ready. Because as we're tracking this, and we're not making predictions, we're looking at what's really going on. We're seeing that everything is deteriorating exactly the way we thought. Because remember, back when unemployment was 10, 11%, retail was a lot better. As the unemployment came down, retail got worse. The housing market is getting worse. And this is at a point where we're at the very, very low area of interest rates that we've never, ever seen before. So we're in a whole lot of trouble. The Fed knows it. The government knows it. The main central banks, they all know it. They all know that we're headed towards a collapse. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.